The date, June 21, 2025. A seemingly ordinary day that would soon be etched in history. The United States, a nation long concerned with nuclear proliferation in the Middle East, and Israel, a nation that views a nuclear Iran as an existential threat, jointly launched a massive coordinated assault on Iran's highly contested nuclear facilities. The operation was swift, precise, and devastating. This act marked a dramatic and dangerous escalation in already heightened Middle East tensions, sending shockwaves across the globe. After years of covert operations, intelligence gathering, and proxy conflicts fought in the shadows, the simmering tensions finally boiled over. This direct and overt attack shattered the uneasy status quo that had precariously held for so long, pushing the already volatile region to the very brink of a full-scale war, a conflict that threatened to engulf the entire world. The strikes followed a week of spiraling violence, a series of escalating events that led to this fateful decision. Israel initiated the chain of events, first hitting Iran's critical Natanz nuclear site, immediately prompting Tehran to vow swift and decisive retaliation, which came in the form of hundreds of missiles launched against targets within Israel. The US, after long issuing stern warnings against Iran developing a nuclear arsenal, ultimately joined Israel, escalating the conflict into a decisive and unprecedented large-scale military operation, directly targeting and severely damaging Iran's critical nuclear infrastructure. This aggressive move signaled the definitive collapse of all diplomatic efforts and negotiations, marking a dangerous shift towards open and direct military conflict, a path fraught with peril. The world now watches with bated breath, bracing itself for the unpredictable and potentially catastrophic consequences of this action. Now, the globe watches anxiously, glued to their screens, uncertain if this high-stakes gamble will ultimately bring lasting security and stability to the region, or if it will instead unleash uncontrollable chaos and widespread devastation, plunging the world into an even darker and more uncertain future. US and Israeli leaders justified the strikes as a last resort to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Intelligence showed Iran enriching uranium far beyond civilian needs, and diplomatic channels had failed. The operation targeted Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, crippling the core of Iran's nuclear program in one coordinated blow. After Iran's missile retaliation against Israel, the US saw direct intervention as unavoidable. The goal set back Iran's nuclear ambitions by years, even at the risk of igniting a wider conflict. The assault showcased overwhelming US and Israeli military power. Over 125 American aircraft, including B-2 stealth bombers, struck deep underground sites with massive bunker-buster bombs. US Navy submarines launched Tomahawk missiles at Isfahan, saturating Iran's defenses and achieving tactical surprise. Israel's earlier strikes had weakened Iranian positions and provided crucial intelligence. The operation was a model of modern warfare, precise, devastating, and technologically advanced. It sent a clear message: the US and Israel would use overwhelming force to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions. In Washington, the atmosphere was thick with a mixture of triumph and apprehension. President Trump, addressing the nation, declared the mission a spectacular success, a decisive blow against a dangerous regime. He spoke with confidence, outlining what he described as a victory for peace and security in the region. He went on, claiming Iran's nuclear capacity was effectively obliterated, its progress set back years, if not decades. The administration hailed the operation as a necessary act of self-defense. US officials, echoing the president's sentiment, warned Iran in no uncertain terms that any further aggression, any act of retaliation, would be met with an even greater and more devastating force. The message was clear: the US was prepared to defend its interests and its allies. In Tehran, the response was immediate and furious, a wave of outrage sweeping across the nation. The Revolutionary Guard, the most powerful military force in Iran, wasted no time in declaring, "War starts right now." Their statement was broadcast across state media, igniting a sense of nationalistic fervor. With tens of thousands of US troops stationed at bases throughout the region, every American base, from sprawling airfields to small outposts, instantly became a potential target for Iranian retaliation. Both sides dug in, reinforcing their positions and preparing for what seemed like an inevitable confrontation. The rhetoric escalated, the threats intensified, leaving little room for de-escalation or diplomatic solutions. The US framed the events as a necessary counter-proliferation victory, a triumph over a dangerous nuclear program. Iran, however, viewed the strike as an unprovoked act of war, a blatant violation of its sovereignty demanding swift and decisive retribution. The world watched with bated breath, bracing for Iran's inevitable retaliation, a response that threatened to plunge the region into a full-blown conflict. The initial strikes brought devastating human consequences, a stark reminder of the brutal realities of conflict. The impact reverberated through communities, leaving scars that will take generations to heal. The destruction was especially acute in Iran, where urban centers bore the brunt of the attacks. Hundreds were killed in the immediate aftermath, their lives tragically cut short. Thousands more were injured, overwhelming medical facilities and stretching resources to their breaking point. Civilian sites, including a Tehran apartment building once a home to families and dreams, were completely destroyed, reduced to rubble and dust. This senseless loss of life fueled widespread outrage and profound grief, as families mourned loved ones lost in the chaos. Iran's missile barrages also reached across borders, killing and wounding Israelis, bringing the harsh realities of war to their doorsteps. The conflict shattered the illusion of safety, bringing the war home to both nations' civilians, who now grapple with fear and uncertainty. The escalating violence only deepened existing animosity, hardening positions and making dialogue even more challenging. With each strike and counterstrike, the prospect of lasting peace seemed to recede further into the distance, replaced by a growing sense of despair. With U.S. troops and regional allies increasingly at risk, the stakes of the conflict rose dramatically. The world watched with growing alarm as fears of a multi-front war engulfing the entire region began to materialize. The specter of global oil disruption loomed large, threatening to send shockwaves through the world economy. The relentless attacks have fundamentally redrawn the Middle East's map, reshaping geopolitical alliances and power dynamics. But this reshaping has come at a staggering cost, measured in lives lost, communities shattered, and futures irrevocably altered. Now the world anxiously hopes for a breakthrough in diplomacy, a chance to de-escalate tensions and avert further bloodshed. Yet even as diplomatic efforts continue, the specter of a much larger, more devastating war looms ominously on the horizon, threatening to consume the region and beyond.